All right. Hey, so what we're doing is we're in Luke today, and I'm getting back on. Last week, obviously, I did a different message on God's glory because of our men being gone. But we're jumping back into Luke today, and we'll be picking up where we left off in chapter 12. So we're going to jump right in, and today's message is interesting for a couple of reasons, and it starts off actually just as the verse begins. So let's look at this. Luke 12, starting in verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Okay. So they're in this crowd. Jesus has been teaching on things. Obviously, he's been having people around him. And a guy just basically reaches out, does this seem odd? And the answer is no. It's not odd in the sense if he's seen as a rabbi, if he's seen as a teacher, one of the roles sometimes was for them to basically take care of problems or issues. And so this guy kind of yells out, "Hey, teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And so in that, what's interesting is that, again, that's one side of the story. How many guys have ever heard only one side of the story? And then you heard the other side of the story and went, "Oh, okay, well, it's a little different." The idea is, and so it's interesting, the idea is Jesus makes a comment. His comment is really intriguing. He says, "But he said to him, 'Man, who made me judge or arbitrator over you?'" It's actually him quoting what happened to Moses. Look at this. This is Exodus 2:14. He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely this thing is known." And so what had happened is that Moses had killed an Egyptian, and he sees two of his Hebrew brothers fighting, and he tries to stop them, and they go, "Hey, who are you to judge?" Jesus actually is quoting from this passage here. And it's interesting that Jesus kind of says, "Well, who am I to be the judge and arbiter over this?" Now, here's what's interesting. We ultimately know that Jesus will be the ultimate judge. Amen? I mean, the sheep and the goats, this is all coming. But in this situation, Jesus does something really intriguing. He kind of skips over it and goes, "I'm not even going to waste my time." When you understand the purpose of Christ and what he was here to accomplish, this request by this man, honestly, is not even on the radar of something he's going to deal with. Mainly because of the essence of it. Notice he wasn't saying, "Hey, Jesus, make my brother love me." "Hey, Jesus, help me be more compassionate." It's a financial issue. "Hey, Jesus, tell him to divide the inheritance." It's about money. It's about money. And Jesus, by the way, as we understand Scripture, which I will bring up today, understanding what really matters, this isn't even it. This isn't even something that he's going to care about. But isn't it amazing that we do? Oh, this is the big issue. The big issue for us is, Jesus, take care of this money issue. And he's like, money? That's your concern? That really is going to be the thing that for you is going to be the issue, is money? That is so minimal to him. And it's not even going to spend his time on it. Watch what he says. He said to them, "Man, who made me judge or arbitrator over you?" And then he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness." By the way, another word for greed. "For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." So Jesus, without a home, traveling with these people, he literally is living off of the blessings of the people around him, makes a statement, goes, "Be careful about this whole, hey, divide the inheritance with me." Because what he's speaking of is, you have an assumption in your inheritance. The inheritance is going to somehow sustain you. And of course, Jesus will say things like, "Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that flows from me." And so what happens is that Jesus is beginning this process of just trying to say, what you think is so important is not. It really isn't. What you think is going to sustain you, what you think is going to give you life, actually has the ability to take life from you. Has the ability to take your focus off of where it should be. And so you want me to arbitrate over a money issue when money is not the answer? Money's a tool. It's great when it's used right. It's great that it allows us to do and barter and trade and do the things, but it's not the essence. But I will tell you, if you want to hear most pastors, you want to get a rise out of their people, talk about money or talk about, and that's where people get really upset. You can say a lot of things that should be much more poignant, much more heart-touching. But when you get reactions is when you start talking about money. Because it's this place where it's like maybe we have control or we have this thing where, well, I have this, and don't be taking it or be asking of it. And so Jesus, in some ways, just kind of just passes this guy off and just goes, look, don't get into this. Do not. Because here's the deal. The abundance of possessions are not going to give you what you're looking for. Verse 16, and he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. What produced plentifully? What did? The land. The dirt, the soil, the seed, the rain, the land produced. It's kind of interesting about this thing is that we live where we think, well, look what I've done. And yet we forget the raw materials that most of the things that we do come from God. The land produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? You're going to see a lot of I statements in the next few scriptures. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. Now, from an outside stance, okay, you have this abundance of grain. I mean, it's just overflowing. What are you going to do? I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Okay. I mean, I don't want it to spoil. I don't want it to ruin. I mean, it's been a blessing. So from a practicality, what this guy is doing is like, it doesn't seem that far off. But what's happening is what's happening in his heart. Because here's what happens next. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. The assumption in this guy is, I have this abundance, which really came from God, but I'm going to build barns so I can focus on me. I'll relax, I'll eat, I'll drink, and I'll be merry. Because what he's saying is, my essence of what gives me value is in those barns. What's going to give me hope and what's going to give me assurance is in those barns. You know what also he says? I'm going to stop working. Do you notice that? I'm going to stop working. I'm just going to relax. I got enough to take care of moi. You guys remember moi? That's a good word. I got enough to take care of this. And so that's his plan. Now, interesting in this, Jesus is telling this story. And again, up to this point when he all of a sudden it's about this guy, by the way, some of us are still going, well, guy, I mean, if you have a good abundance, I mean, why work any harder? I mean, just live off the rest of this for the rest of, that's kind of a cool deal. But God said to him, fool. It's always love when God calls you a fool, right? God said to him, fool. This night your soul is required of you. And the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? So you have this abundance, and you built the barns, but you're going home. You're not going to enjoy the fruits of those things. And there's an issue right in this passage that we have to deal with. What is life? Is life that I have all that I need? Is life that I have this stuff? By the way, history of the scriptures will tell us anytime that we have an abundance, you can go back to those who went to the promised land when they had an abundance, and it happens over and over again. Usually what happens is our eyes come off God. It's a common occurrence. It's warned against over and over again. That what happens is when we think that what we have and what we need is taken care of, then there becomes this less reliance on God. And I have had those who probably for them would say, yeah, I have everything taken care of. Like, I just don't see God in my life. I'm like, because you have no need to rely on him. You have no need that he needs to take care of you. You have no need that he needs to be in that moment and be real, because honestly, the things that you think matter, you've got it covered. I got food. I have this. So what happens is that in our world, we trade that I have everything taken care of now for this desperate need of God to take care of us. Ecclesiastes. This is Solomon. Solomon, by the way, just an amazing story when you understand how truly rich this guy was. I mean, talking about billionaire, I mean, him and Gates would be going toe to toe on how much money that Solomon had. I mean, it's just funny. You listen to Solomon, he goes, "Oh, you plant gardens? I plant forests. That's how much money I have. I plant entire forests with what I have." Oh, you have wives? You want to start counting my wives? It goes on and on and on. And there's all this story, but we get to this, and it's really interesting that he has this heart. He says, "I hated all my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me." I hated all my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be the master of all which I have toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. I mean, I planted forests. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. It's the question that's being asked of the rich man. Okay, you built these barns. Who gets to enjoy it after you? One of the struggles is we go, okay, well, my kids. My kids. I'm hoping my dad and mom get to come out here pretty soon. My dad, and I'll tell you a story about my dad and I. And I think it happens with all parents. The concept is how you grew up is your frame of reference. How you grew up is your frame of reference. My dad's frame of reference is coming from West Texas, very poor. There's a whole backstory of his family. My grandparents were both alcoholics. My grandmother ultimately ended up buying a bar so she could buy her alcohol cheaper. And my dad grew up many days on a bar stool. But literally just no money. And so when I was growing up, when I was about 11 or 12, my dad said this. Now, by the way, just calm down. I'm giving you a little bit of the privacy of our own home. My dad goes, "You're going to turn 16 and we're going to have a fight in the front lawn." I'm like 11. My dad's 6'4", 230 pounds. He's shrinking as he gets older, which is better because now I can take him. But I'm just saying. And I was 11. I was like, "What?" "Yeah, at 16, you and I are going to have a fight in the front lawn." Okay. 12, "Yeah, you and I will have a fight on the front lawn." Oh, okay. 13, 14, 15, 16 was not a happy moment because I'm getting ready for this fight on the front lawn. Here's the problem. My dad didn't raise me in a bar. My dad worked hard, and honestly, I didn't have the poverty that he experienced. And I didn't have the relationship with my father the way he had with his father. Does that make sense? Because my dad loved me and because of Christ in his life and what had transformed in my life, my dad's assumption was because he had a fight with his dad, 16, in the front lawn, that's what we were going to do. We never fought on the front lawn. because my dad had changed the very trajectory of our lives to the point is there was nothing but love between me and my dad. Does that make sense? But in his frame of reference, this is what happens when you turn 16. It never happened. Why? Because what happened is that his focus was not the same focus of his father. His focus was on raising me up and loving me and honestly telling me he loved me. And I've told this to people. He expected me to give him a kiss on the lips until I was at least 17. My boys are like, whew, that hasn't had to happen. But in that, what's so funny is I think sometimes you are parenting your kids from your perspective of how you grew up, and they're having completely different perspectives. They haven't had to face the challenges you faced at 9, 10, 12, 13, 15. They haven't had the experiences because you actually maybe changed the trajectory of your family. You made different choices than your parents made. But we sometimes think that our kids are going to do the same things we're doing when the reality is they're not. I'm not musical. I like to sing, but I'm not musical. So far, Jody obviously plays, sings, Ethan's playing guitar, Ben's drumming. Completely lost. Like if the partnership family ever goes off and it's called the Harris family, I'm the bus driver at this moment. That's my job. But that's a world I don't understand. I don't understand the music world. I don't understand. Like I tried. I picked up a bass guitar. I tried to be like Esteban. I tried. I think just sat there and looked cool in the corner of my room. But in my family, my boys are experiencing something that honestly was not a part of my life. And that's not bad. That's good. Why am I using that? Because here's what's happening, is that what's happening in this story is that here is Solomon, who's all this wisdom. He goes, I'm going to do all this, and I don't even know what's going to happen to the next generation. The next generation could take it to a better direction, or they could tank it. Some of you have been around long enough that you had the family-owned business where they gave it to the son, and the son just drove it in the ground. Why? Because he never worked for it. He never toiled for it. He never had to put in the hours to make it happen. It was just handed to him. And sometimes that's not good. Watch this. This is Job 27, 16 through 21. Though he heap up silver like dust and pile up clothing like clay. For some of you women right now, you're going, wow, that kind of hit home. All right, so he may pile it up, but the righteous will wear it. And the innocent will divide the silver. He builds his house like a moth, like a booth that a watchman makes. He goes to bed rich, but he will do so no more. He opens his eyes and his wealth is gone. Terrors overtake him like a flood. In the night, a whirlwind carries him off. The east winds lift him up and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place. So when our hope is in this stuff, and like what we watched with Katrina, you guys remember there were just things devastated by Katrina. I mean, money there and then gone. Businesses there, gone. Everything people put their hopes in, people put their futures in, gone. One of the saddest things you will watch is just some of these places, and you've seen it with movie stars, where all of a sudden they're having an auction, right? Auctioning off this stuff. One of Mike Tyson's mansions is being turned into a church. It's gone. So, what are we doing with this? I mean, here we have this verse that says, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So let's go back into context. A man speaks out and says, hey, make a decision. Tell my brother to divide the inheritance. And Jesus turns around and goes, hey, watch out for greed. And let me tell you a story. A story of a man who, by the way, his blessings came from God, but he turned around and built barns because he was going to make sure that he was taken care of. And he was not, as it says here, rich towards God. And it was gone that night. And by the way, a whole other group of people got to come and enjoy his wealth. A whole new group that got to enjoy what he had. So why is this important? I think we have to be careful. We have to be careful that we think that money is the answer. I've told you this story before. I just have trusted God in a different way. I graduated high school. As you guys know, my dad was a truck driver. Really, honestly, at this point, I believe he was working for Unical, and he was a mechanic at Unical. He had moved out of driving at this point. And I wanted to go to private school. Private school is expensive. I don't know if you know that. And my parents looked at me and they just said, we just were really hoping that you would go to like the community college because we just don't have it. And they said, what we can do is we can pay your car insurance. I'm like, yes, one less thing. Check, right? And I've told you this before. I said, God, if you want me to do this, then you got to take care of it. And so I did. I worked a full-time job while I was at college. I worked delivering furniture. I worked as a janitor for a church. Ultimately, I got a job at UPS, working in the morning unload part of it. Any extra money I had, I walked to the financial aid office and I'd throw it on the counter. I mean, there are times I gave them coins, okay? And so in that, I said, God, so my church ended up helping out people. I got grants. I got blessed in ways I traveled for the school. That took care of a semester of tuition. God was just really, really good to me. I graduated after 5 years of being at college. I graduated with $1,000 of debt that I paid off in 3 months and was done. Why? Because God has provision. God has what we need. And I think one of the difficulties sometimes is I had friends who their school was paid for. And honestly, I'm just being honest, they didn't really take it seriously. It was someone else's bill. Someone else is paying for it. They could care less if a class got canceled. I got angry. Do you know why? That was $350. I knew how much every class cost. That was $350 I didn't get to have that education at because I was paying for it. And there's value in this place where we think that the idea of God's like, it's not about the possessions, it's what we do with it. And so here's this issue is that you were not, this is what he says, you were not generous towards God. So how do we, in this situation, go, okay, well, what is it? I mean, by the way, next week, it's just going to go deeper into this idea of do not be anxious about anything. But if I took a poll in this room, most of the anxiety in this room is over money. It's over how we're going to pay this bill. Kids are going to need braces, or, how do we take care of the transmissions going out? And we have a God that just loves us and says, look, again, think about this. Just think about this. This man asked Jesus a financial question, and he kind of blew it off. Because it's like, if that's your biggest concern, you don't get it. And if money is your biggest concern, maybe you don't get it either. And that's easy for me to say. It's a lot harder to do. But I do know this, he is faithful. He is faithful. And next week, it's all going to get unraveled and it's going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. But just hear this. If you have it, putting it in Barnes or maybe even in a savings account is maybe not your best option. There is a generousness of life of just letting it go. And we've told our story many times of God just continues to tell us to let our funds go, and yet he continues to take care of our family. Now, by the way, that's never always easy, but he's faithful. He's faithful. And when our focus becomes, at the end of this day, I'm going to make sure that I am relaxed and I can just take care of myself, maybe that's not the game. Maybe there needs to be a reliance upon him to the very last breath. A reliance that he is going to take care of you. A reliance that he's going to meet your needs. And the idea is that we can tell ourselves, boy, once I get this, we'll be set. Really? Has that ever really worked? Has there ever really been enough? Matthew 6, 19 through 21. You've all read this passage, but this is a passage that honestly makes us uncomfortable. Because if we were to live it out, it would change literally how we live. I'm not just saying literally to say literally. I'm saying literally how we live. Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moths and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that's really what he's saying through this. If your treasure is these physical things, your treasure is, I have enough to make sure I'm taking care of me. God goes, then you don't get it. Then you don't get it. We're in a political season. One of the candidates, Bernie, unabashedly, Bernie Madoff, unabashedly says he's a socialist. Socialism, we all take care, everyone fits, everyone cuts through, everyone gets a piece of that. Hate to tell you, if you read Acts, the beginning of Acts, a lot of the first beginning of the church looks a lot like socialism. Because what happens is it's not about me acquiring and having my stuff and making sure I can take care of me. It's about this idea that I care about you. One of the most beautiful things that happens as a part of Compassion Network, and it just happened a few weeks ago, is when we get to watch a client come in with need. Lots of needs. Church steps in here, church steps in there, a person steps in there, people step in, and all of a sudden this person rises out of that. And then you watch that person go, I'm coming back, I'm not asking, I'm giving, what can I do? And they needed help. They needed tangible things. They needed a car payment made. They needed food on their shelves. They needed clothes for the kids. They needed a backpack for school. They needed all of these things. But because of those things, they rose up because Christ is in the center of it. By the way, socialism does not work if Christ is not at the center of it, by the way. And then we watch them come back going, how do I give back? And that's the heart. That's the heart where God goes, how do I make you understand that if you have it all, if you got yourself all covered, chances are you may not search me. Lay up for yourselves that which will not be destroyed. I believe I'm going to get to heaven, I hope, and see what my ministry and youth ministry for years or whatever, and will be, I'm here because you gave. I'm here because you spent. I don't think that I'm going to be missing a lot of the stuff. Man, if I only had that one pillow, that'd be awesome if I had that one pillow. I don't think it's going to be it. So why is this uncomfortable? It's uncomfortable because, folks, we live in America. This sermon plays differently in other countries. You guys know that, right? And if you don't, you need to. I was reading a report this week. Do you guys realize, I didn't know this, the country of Germany, let me say that again, the country of Germany, if they became our 51st state, the country of Germany, if they became our 51st state, would be one of the poorest states in our nation. Let that sit with you. The country of Germany, if they became one of our states, would be one of the poorest states in our nation. We have such an abundance. We have such an abundance. And yet, there's this sense of like, I just got to make sure I have it. I got to keep it. I got to make sure I take care of me. And yet our heart is moved when you see people who will give it and give to God and do so sacrificially, and we watch God take care of them. We watch God walk with them. And we watch God move in their lives. This sermon is a precursor to the next little bit that's coming. And you're going to get a lot of this idea of, do you trust God? Do you trust him? To the point that you would even say, you know what, maybe I don't need to have that in savings. Maybe that could be blessed in different ways. Maybe what I do is I liquidate that and I give that to God and I trust him to take care of me. Jeff, that's my retirement. I know. And by the way, I think this is a personal struggle each one of us have to go through with God. But what happens when you go, because when people would say to me that I would graduate Bible college and only have $1,000 of debt that I paid off within 3 months, people told me that would never happen. But I have a God that's bigger than that. I have a God that says, Jeff, do you trust me? By the way, I didn't sit down and he paid all my bills and there was nothing for me to do. I had to work. I was working jobs. I was doing papers late at night. I was getting stuff in whenever I could. I remember studying in the cab of the moving truck. But God was good. And I think what happens is we miss it. That God goes, you think you're going to have all this stuff and then you're gone. And someone else gets to enjoy it. Not you. Not you. Because it wasn't about you enjoying it. It's about whether or not we trust him with who we are. And that's a trust place. It really is. Now I'm going to ask the praise band to stay seated. I'm going to pray. And then we're going to talk about some stuff. Okay? Father, I'm going to ask that you just come into this place right now and you